Hi, everyone. It's 3:30, and this is when the town hall is scheduled to begin. I'm going to give just a few more minutes for others to join. I see that we have a handful here, and that's great. Most of the names I recognize, so thank you for joining us. I know it's a little bit late in the afternoon on the East Coast, but welcome. And we are going to go through this town hall. You are all muted right now, and that is just for housekeeping to kind of keep the conversation flow going and to be mindful of everyone that's on this town hall right now. So I have you muted, and I'm going to go through just a few slides. After those slides are presented, then I will open it up to Q&A, and at that time we can have questions going. We can have chat questions typed, and then you can raise your hand and ask a question verbally, whatever is most comfortable to you. But I will get us started with the presentation. Let me pull it up here. And just a few slides, because I realize that the intent of this is for as much time as possible to answer questions. So there's just a few slides, bear with me, and then we'll get to your comments and questions. Well, okay. So this is the town hall for the NEHA REHS RS exam update. An update is a natural occurrence through the life cycle of an exam. So this is not an unusual event. It is just the natural progression as the exam changes. This exam has been around for decades. And so periodically we aim for every about 5 years. It could be 3 to 5 years, but we aim to refresh the blueprint from time to time just to make sure that the information that's covered on the exam is accurately capturing what's happening out in the field, because the intent of these exams is to demonstrate professional competency. And so periodically, we have subject matter experts get together, and they look at the current blueprint that's offered, see if that still is relevant, and change it as needed. And that's what we've done. So now we are at the point where we have a new exam form that's going to be released. And so we're just sharing some information with you, and we are trying to give enough advance notice or conversation so that we can address any questions or concerns that anyone could have. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you are not familiar with Teams, to navigate and use Teams, we'll be interacting quite a bit. So you'll see this bar across the top of your screen most likely, but there will be a bar with a few little pictures on it. And so just to highlight the ones that are pertinent to today, there's the little paragraph icon that that looks like a little thought bubble, or it looks like a paragraph, a couple of lines of text. That icon, it opens up the chat window. So if you want to type a question, then you can use the chat window to type. Next to the chat icon is the hand. So if you would like to ask a question, please hit that icon. I'll see that you've raised your hand, and then you can ask your question. That just helps so that we're not all speaking over each other, and it makes for communication to be a little bit more streamlined. So you can raise your hand, and then we know you have a question. The microphone, which is just a few more to the right, it looks like a microphone, and that is your mute. So that will mute and unmute. And if you're muted, you'll have a red X through that microphone icon. If there is no red X, then you are speaking. And then if you happen to be dialed in, I haven't noticed that anyone dialed in, but if you are dialed in, it's *6 to mute and unmute yourself. So those are the general navigation tips for Teams. And as I mentioned, this is the afternoon session for the town hall. It is scheduled to go for an hour and a half, which is 7 o'clock on the Eastern time zone. If we happen to conclude early and there aren't that many questions, we will adjourn and give you some free time in your evening. But I want to allow as much time as possible for questions. So we've scheduled this to go for a full hour and a half. And in March, we'll follow up with another session of town halls. It'll probably be similar to this, where there'll be a morning and an afternoon event. And those dates are not determined yet, but they will be announced. And then the purpose of this town hall is to inform you about the changes that are coming to this REHS-RS exam. As I mentioned, it's a natural progression, but we do want to make those changes available so that individuals that are testing or considering testing can be as prepared as possible. I'm going to provide details at the blueprint level. So we're going to go over the blueprint. Again, that's a publicly available document, and we'll run through it so that you can be familiar with it if you haven't already looked at it. Provide significant dates to you that correspond to these changes. And then essentially the main reason that we're here is to be present to answer questions and respond to concerns. So that is the purpose of this. There are some helpful documents that are out there. There is the blueprint, which we will go over, and then there is also an FAQ document. Both of those links can be found on the REHS-RS credential page. So I've listed all of those links here, and I've put them in the chat. So if you open up the chat and you look in the chat, you'll notice that those 3 links exist right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull up the blueprint. So this is what the exam is going to be changing to. Let's see, can you see my screen? And I think I was sharing my screen and now I see that it dropped. So let me share my screen again. So this is the new blueprint, like I said, that's coming out in September 1st. This will be the blueprint. So there is going to be new exam content starting September 1st. Until then, we're still using the current exam that we have. But September 1st is the date to keep in mind there. And so this new exam blueprint, it's going to cover performing environmental health surveillance, and then underneath that, the areas that fall under that, conducting inspections. I'll go slowly through this so that you can see it, but also keep in mind that you have this available to look at your leisure. Conducting investigations, conducting compliance review, and providing environmental health information. So those are the categories that are going to be covered on the exam form that's coming out in September. Now, to help you figure out what the difference is between the current exam and the new exam, we've created a crosswalk of sorts. So if you look at this screen, we have on the left the current exam that's in place through the end of August, and the categories right now that are in the current exam and how they translate over to the new exam. So if you notice, there is not a lot of drastic change coming. There are a few percentage points and categorical shifts, but overall the content is remaining the same or very, very similar. So that's helpful because if we have people out there that are trying to figure out when they want to take their exam, the good news is that the references and the study materials that we have out there right now will reasonably prepare you for either exam form, no matter which one you want to take. But this is to allay some fears that there are drastic changes coming. There aren't really, but this crosswalk is intended just to kind of give you an idea of how the significance of the change. Okay. And now we've opened it up to question and answer. So really, this is your time to talk to us, talk to me. We have some NEHA staff on here as well. And as I said, you are all muted, but you can unmute yourself. So you can either hit the microphone icon and start talking, or you can raise your hand and we will address your questions. Does anyone want to talk? Okay. Mr. Serenecki, I see. Do you have your hand raised? I believe you're still on mute. If you want to just hit the microphone and unmute yourself. Let me see. Okay, now you should be able to speak. Hmm. I can see your lips moving, but I cannot hear you. However, the microphone icon shows that you should be able to talk. You aren't muted. Maybe, would you mind typing your question into the chat? Oh, Dr. Dijek has his hand up.
Thank you for this, Sarah. What happens to an applicant who takes the exam prior to September the 1st, does not pass? I understand that they are eligible to take the exam again. Which exam would that be?
Okay, great question. So we typically encourage people to wait 90 days if they need to retake an exam. And that is been evidence best practices that individuals usually need about 90 days to take an exam and pass or do better than what they did before. And so because of this timing and because we're aware that we have special consideration, we are waiving that 90-day window. So if someone happens to, let's say, test in May, they could turn around and try to test again before the August 31st deadline. And we would do whatever we can to help facilitate that process. But this is a hard stop or a hard implementation. So when September 1 happens, the exam form is going to update and change. So there might be a handful of people that test in August, mid-August, or early August that end up having to take actually 2 exams. But rest assured, this exam, it's still the same, it's held to the same rigor. So the exam, the intent of the exam, which is to measure professional competency, and the appropriateness and the rigorousness, that's a word, of the exam will not change. The score is the same. It's still a 650 cut score. And so in a lot of respects, it's going to be the same or equivalent. It's just changing a little bit. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Can you hear me now?
I can't. Yes, we can hear you now. Very faintly, though, but we can hear you.
Oh,
good.
Okay, I'll get closer. Mine is the same question. I
Uh-huh.
just don't accept your answer.
Okay.
Because you start out with saying that that there's very little changes.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's very little changes, what is the issue of somebody not passing on?
I'm sorry, you're breaking out again.
I'll say with the old exam, is it clearer now?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I got a very sophisticated setup here, and it's way beyond my pay grade.
Oh.
And I spend 10 hours a day in front of this thing.
Wow.
But not on this particular.
So you were speaking about the old exam and broke up a little bit?
If someone takes the old exam and does not pass.
Yes.
And then you are saying that there are very little changes. So then why is it so important that they again take the old exam and not just progress to the new exam?
That's actually what I'm saying. They're not going to take the old exam. So an individual in that scenario, let's say someone tests August 1st. And keep in mind, when there's a retake, there is a few days and actually maybe a week or two that we typically ask for our staff to process that retake application. So it is not an overnight thing where you get your score on a Thursday and then you can retake on a Friday. There are a few days that go in between that for us to process and to get the individual set up to be able to schedule their computer exam again. So we have to keep that in mind. Timing is very, very important, which is why we've waived that initial 90-day period. Now, there might be some individuals that do fail the current test, and then they have to actually retake the new exam form. But to your point, it doesn't matter which exam instrument they're taking. They both measure the same thing, which is the professional competency. But in someone's mind, I think they might feel more comfortable retaking the same exam. But again, it's a personal choice, and that's why we are trying to come out with this information. This is February, and we're talking about September. So hopefully, through these conversations, we can get people comfortable with what's coming down and what they need to prepare for. I see Rance has his question or his hand raised. Rance, do you want to talk?
Thanks, Sarah, on that. I just want to clarify and maybe make sure that I'm correct on this. There's very few changes in the blueprint on what it is that makes up the professional there, but there are changes in the questions. So what we're not saying is that the questions in the exam are the same, but what we're saying is the blueprint is very similar.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
And this is Carol Newland, and I work with the people that are taking the exam, and it's true that a lot of people don't pass and they have to retake it. And this is the third time I've gone through the shift from one version to a newer version. And I can just tell you from experience that people that have failed it, especially if they've already taken it several times, they get very nervous, and at least the ones that contact me, they want to take the version that they're familiar with. They feel very strongly like, oh, I got to take it again because I'm familiar with that one. I don't want to start over with the different exam. I mean, a lot of the questions are going to be very, very similar or the same. They're not changing out all the questions. But it's just that people take this exam so seriously, and they need to, that they get kind of panicky, and they'll want to take it. If they fail it, they'll want to take the same one again. But I think overall, it's not going to be that much different if they end up taking the new one. I mean, in the past, the other two times we've gone through this, it didn't change much, as far as how difficult it was or the passing rate. That's all.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any other questions, comments, considerations?
Yes, this is Walter again.
Uh-huh.
I'm still confused as to what a candidate would use this blueprint for. Because if someone was saying to themselves, all right, well, how much time should I spend on OSHA, or how much time should I spend on radiation protection, or HAZWOP, or bioterrorism, BSL labs, anything, just you name any topic. How are you supposed to use this as a guidance document when it really doesn't mention any of those core competencies of environmental health?
Well, the blueprint does hit on, like I said, and you're probably familiar with the job task analysis, where we look at the job task analysis for the profession, and then what we did over the course of the past 18 months was revalidate it. And so revalidating that job task analysis began the process of creating the blueprint document. And that gives the individuals that are taking the exam an idea of what information they should be aware of and the breakdown of how it is. Now, we don't specifically go into the questions that are on the exam. There is a differentiation between the credentialing side, which administers the exam, and then the entrepreneurial zone, which is making those study guides and review documents, because we don't want to teach to the test. This is saying that we are assuming that when you apply, you have a certain level of professional competency. And this exam is showcasing that, yes, you know how to be the professional that you want to be. And so the blueprint is a guide, if you will. It's intended to facilitate preparation that someone would go through for the exam, but also keeping in mind that, this is someone that has some knowledge and expertise and level of dealing with environmental health in the first place. Does that answer your question?
Not even one iota.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
I'm not angry. I'm just trying to understand how
Sarah,
anybody
can I
would.
help?
Go ahead, jump in, Ray.
Please.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So the blueprint allows several things there. One is for them to understand the degree on which the questions have been developed for the exam. So
No.
48% of
No.
them, yes. So
No.
48% of them have been will be in some area of conducting inspections there. So as they're going through and developing them, they're putting a larger percentage in them. If only 12% of them is conducting investigations, roughly 12% of the questions will be about conducting investigations. At the same time, it allows us to build this is the only place where we interact between developing the study guide and the exam, and it allows us to build the blueprint for the study guide. So as we're going through, we will flesh out each of these categories into those greater categories, and be able to develop a new study guide for the exam with more current information.
Okay. Dr. Dijak has his hand raised, so please go ahead, Dr. Dijak. Oh, you might be on mute.
My apologies. This may be a little in the weeds, but maybe you could clarify for me what happened to responding to emergencies. I see the table, I see the arrows, but has that been embedded in some of these other rubrics?
Correct. And it would be the environmental health surveillance. I believe in I have to go back and look at that, but yes, it has been put into those categories. So performing environmental health surveillance, promoting environmental health information, the responding to emergencies goes into both of those categories.
Understood. And then on the right-hand side for the new exam, the promoting environmental health information is equivalent to the old exam for awareness. Am I reading that properly?
Similar, yes. And
Similar.
it
Okay.
might help. We could actually go back and look under those categories, because this would, so here, this is providing environmental health information, and there, here it talks about emergency response preparedness and plans, notifying the public, notifying individuals they have corrective actions. So does that help a little bit as well?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And I think that probably answers Walter's question, because I think the heart of his question is, how does this help someone begin to prepare for the exam? And Mr. I don't know if it's Dr. Sarnecki or Mr. Sarnecki, what Sarah's showing here, it seems to me that's really helpful in terms of the relative percent. Where should I spend my time studying?
I don't see it as helpful at all. I don't know how that's going to tell a candidate what to be studying. Like the word inspect is used 13 times on this on the duties and tasks with the blueprint, and perform is 16 times. And really, I mean, it's very nebulous. That it really doesn't. Conducting inspections on. Finally, it gets down to like B5. It tells you wastewater. Okay. B6, potable water. B7. It's the only really time is under the conducting inspections B that it tells you that there's going to be so many questions on there. But it's like you say that you're trying to determine whether this person has knowledge in the profession. But here you're conducting all of these inspections, which tends to be just a checklist. And then we're going to be just a bunch of technicians that are certified to fill out a checklist. That doesn't sound very attractive to a lot of young people.
Well, I can tell you that this particular blueprint, as I said, was as we go through the developing a curriculum process. That's the process we use. It's referred to as DACUM, and the blueprint that's proposed and the breakdown in the blueprint is validated by statistical analysis. We send the blueprint out to thousands of practicing professionals. And these aren't just thousands of anyone's, these are thousands of people that are practicing environmental health. And they responded to the surveys. And what that does is that helps us see if that blueprint is accurate or not. And in this case, it did. That from what we got from the survey results, it reflects what's being practiced and the percentage that it is being practiced. So it is a guide to it's a guide. It is not going to tell you that you have to know this particular food code element. It's a guide to help you understand maybe where in your environmental health skills and expertise that you might want to brush up on an area if you're not that familiar with it, so that you could reasonably pass an exam. And that's kind of the intent.
Well, I still feel you really missed the intent. I love
Okay.
the intent. I don't see it at all here in this document. And I don't care how many statistical analysis you can do and what methodology, but I just don't see it here. And this is just like your previous blueprint.
Okay.
It was the same problem with that. And I've been teaching the preparation course for this exam for 22 years, and I listened to thousands of students, candidates for the exam, you know, complain about different parts of things. Just, like Carol probably hears it on a regular diet. But I just don't see this as helpful. I didn't see the one before this as helpful to anybody, and I don't see this one either. And you say you did a survey of the practicing people, and it looks like the only people that responded were in government that were doing enforcement. I don't see anything here of the things that I do, which is consult and advise and make teach. So here again, I'll just default to it looks like this profession is going to devolve into a bunch of checklist checkers.
I appreciate your concerns and comments. I think that's outside of the scope, though, of this particular town hall. So if anyone has questions about the changes, the dates, as I mentioned, we're going to be implementing some new dates. I think we should maybe track it back to that. I do appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate your opinion, but I do want to keep this towards the purpose of the town hall, which is the changes to the NEHA blueprint. And if we don't have any more questions, we can conclude early, but I do want to give individuals plenty of time.
So Sarah, for those who might be interested, we will have a new study guide coming out. Our instructional designers are working on that, so I don't have a full map. I know you've been working on the Gantt chart, with timelines to make sure that we correlate the two of them together there. But yeah, so it will probably be, Sarah, am I right, this fall that the REHS study guide's coming out?
June is when Sharon anticipated it.
Okay.
So there's not a hard date in June, but there is a date.
Perfect. Thank you.
In June anticipated. And we had a question. So we did have session in the morning, as you guys might be aware of. And in the morning session, someone asked about the face-to-face review. which typically we would have at the annual education conference, and we're not having an in-person annual education conference. So there is not a formal scheduled review course for this. But we do have the new study guide, or the revised study guide, coming out, as you're saying. And so this, I think last time this was occurring, there was a big push when we had our annual education conference where the new exam form was administered in paper. And so this time it's a little bit different because it is going to be administered through computer at Pearson VUE testing centers. And so there are pluses and minuses with everything, but I think if you want to look at the pros of this, it's that and candidates can schedule when it's convenient to them, and so that kind of helps with the preparation when they're preparing to take this exam. They tend to have a little bit more confidence when they schedule it at a center at a time that's convenient to them. So that's a little bit different. And that was a question that was asked this morning. Let's see.
I'm curious to know, this is Eileen Neeson. I'm curious to know, maybe Rance can answer this. Do you know, I know everything is because of COVID, but do we have any ideas of when we might start having online prep courses, or, you know, like either in person way in the future, or maybe an online course for people? Because we do get asked that periodically. And I know we won't be doing it because of the AEC, but is it something that's coming down the pike?
I'm not aware, Eileen, but Rance might be. I know that the focus is the study guide right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. I was multitasking. What was? Sorry.
Eileen was just asking Rance about perhaps an in-person or a recorded training. I know we have the study guide, but is there any plans for something of that nature?
We do, yeah. We'll definitely work on getting a virtual training going on this. You know, my guess is that at the very least we'll have it at the AEC next year there. But until we can get the study guide up and ready, anything virtual won't happen. So my guess is we're probably looking at about a year before we have something virtual.
Okay. Thank you.
Sarah, if I could answer that to Eileen, I just posted a online on-demand review course for the examination after teaching 22 years in person. So Eileen, if you wanted a resource, you could go to registeredsanitarian.com and you will be led there. And I've got about I think I've got 8 or 9 chapters of the 15 chapters that will go up there.
Okay, thank you. Registeredsanitarian.com. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we've been chatting for a half hour now. And are there any new questions? Oh, Reem, you have a question?
Thanks, Sarah. This may be, a strange question, but I'm going to ask regardless. Did you folks have a chance to maybe pilot test this revised exam? And I only ask because I'm wondering, is the revised exam just as rigorous as the current one?
Yes. And yes, it is as rigorous. No, it is not piloted. It is going to so to give you a little bit of background why there's a hard date of the transfer. A lot of that has to do with the privacy and security of the item bank questions themselves. So this is a very secure file that is housed behind encrypted software. And so there is a hard date in that as of August 31st, the file is this particular set of item bank. As of September 1st, the item bank changes and it becomes a new encrypted file. That test is sent to the computer centers before someone is going to test. And so that's how we can be assured that things are, safeguarded and there's no collusion going on, which is copying the exam questions. So it is going to be as rigorous, but that kind of feeds into why there is not a pilot. There isn't a test, if you will. There's not a test of the test. The questions will come out. But as part of the process of pushing out a new exam form, we do have subject matter experts that will take the exam themselves, and that helps us in partnership with our testing partner, Professional Testing Inc. It helps us come up with that cut score. So it's going to be 650 or above is passing, and it's going to be a combination of passing, the score depending upon the questions. And that is all going to be simulated with subject matter experts before the exam form comes out. Does that answer your question? I can go in a little bit further.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone that attended. I don't want to prolong this any longer because I realize that it's getting into the evening out on the East Coast, and this is my round 2, so it'll be. I don't mind breaking a little bit early if that works for everyone here. As I mentioned, I put the links, the NEHA REHS credential page and the FAQs, the new blueprint. Those are all there. This meeting is recorded, and just with the morning session, it'll be available later. And just a big thank you to everyone. Thank you to those who attended. Thank you, Michael, with the IT, for making sure that this meeting ran smoothly. Rance, Carol, Eileen, thank you for jumping in and helping answer questions as well. I think that is all I have, and with that, I think we can conclude. Probably with the chat, I'll just leave up the message if anyone hops on later, but I really don't think we'll have any stragglers at this point. So thank you all so very much. It was nice.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm glad we had this town hall experience. So until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye.
Bye.